Good morning, everybody. I've just found out everybody was waiting for me to kind of start things, so apologies that already we're running late, but those people who know me probably know that that's how I seem to spend most of my life these days. I'm going to speak very, very briefly, because for the lab we're at this halfway point of the things that we've been trying to do. So I think it's, you know, and I've just spent the last 3 months in another country, which has been phenomenal, so I can take zero credit really for any of the things that you're going to encounter today, or for those of you who've been fortunate enough to engage in some of the workshops from the last couple of days, you know, it's not me, it is the team and the amazing, wonderful people that I kind of work with. On that note, what is amazing this year and this kind of expo is to see lots of new faces. So I'm going to ask all those who are engaged and involved in the lab, can you please put up your hand so that if you haven't met these people already, can you please at some point throughout the day at least say hello to them? Okay. Don't let them get away. If I ask them tomorrow and they haven't spoken to at least 10 people today who they haven't met before, then there's going to be trouble. Right, I promised that I wouldn't talk for very long. So I'm showing a quick image here because the lab came out of very much some experiments that we were seeking to do in a media department that was engaged in this radical transformation that was happening in media. So when I look at this image as a photographer, do I see this as a video? Do I see it as an animation? What is it that I see when I'm displaying this on a screen? And I think learning and education is very much in this same state of kind of stasis. For me, this is simply a two-dimensional visualization of something that actually exists in 3D. Now, that's a complex way of saying something quite simple. In November at the last Expo, I reflected on an appointment we had just made with a particular colleague over in the corner. And one of the reasons he said he wanted to join us was that it was this opportunity to be authentic in his ideas and in his approach. And I kind of then took this as a starting point because I thought, blimey, that's a great thing. And we look at kind of, I think, diagrams such as this, and those people who engage in kind of social media may be quite familiar with these sorts of visualizations, which are great. But the one criticism that I kind of tend to have when we think of the role of the lab is that this shows us something that has been, not something that is coming, not something that is evolving. This is a straightforward visualization of something of the past. And I showed this particular diagram and seeing Yannicka there in the background, she pointed me in the direction of this book. And this is a great way that I saw that we see the lab. This is a diagram that demonstrates the production of knowledge. And I think what I'd like to do is just very quickly, I promise, share kind of the next step of where I'm coming from, which could take us in one of three ways. I'm either having a midlife crisis when I'm reflecting, or we're at the midway point of the lab, which is hopefully the idea. And I've forgotten the third one, which was something, and I might remember that at some point. But the challenge that I guess we're setting today really is this moment of exploration. When we run events like this, which run both in the digital sphere as well as in the physical environment, it is an opportunity to explore new ideas that you perhaps have not come across before. So I do come from an arts background. So when I was 19, I'm going to take you back to this moment of reflection. I was in this studio, which obviously looked very, very grand like this, looking at kind of life drawing and how we might kind of engage in what this means to kind of make marks on paper. And a key thing that you're taught, this isn't something, you know, we think of artists and art as something that is creative, but you're taught techniques. You're taught how to look at the world around you and make marks on paper, if we're in that sort of environment, and you explore this idea of negative space. So what do I mean there? Because I get really interested when the lab is involved in innovation, that people say, oh, you're just the innovative lot. We don't do innovation in here. And I guess what I'm trying to draw a connection and an analogy with is that same life drawing studio. As young people who are interested in mark making, for some of us that was all we were kind of good at, you're taught ways to approach the world around you. A negative space, so in other words, this isn't just about kind of what is positive, what we see, this is also about the things that surround it. So in other words, negative space is that space around and between the subjects of an image. So if we begin to think that in a learning kind of environment, and we begin to think of learning as a creative process, not something that is done to us or something that happens to us, but as something that we equally and mutually engage in, we can consider ideas such as Jim Dine's work. So this particular exercise was taking this work as inspiration. That's what we do. You copy, you emulate. But more importantly, it was I guess kind of looking at this particular movement of neo-Dada, so this idea of random, the kind of the experimental, the unexplored, and how do we seek to draw vision or ideas from that chaos around us? And I think we all can feel chaos around us on a daily basis. Already 5 days back of being in the lab, my life is incredibly chaotic. So on, I think any level, my children make my life chaotic. But, you know, when we begin to think of learning, and I think it's a really exciting way to think of learning as a creative process, so that these things are not fixed, these things should not be, this is how we do this. This is about exploration through mark making of learning. And you can come up with these amazing things. If you haven't seen this work, it's phenomenal. So therefore, you know, when we begin to explore both negative and positive space, so we don't polarize them, we're looking at this continuum, we get to see images such as this, or logos such as this, that we see of the Guild of kind of food writers. You know, are we looking at the spoon, or are we looking at the stylus of a pen? It doesn't really matter. It's this ability that we can kind of merge and seamlessly in between them. I come from media, so we've got to bring some media reference in here. Or from the American Werewolf in London, where through both the negative and the positive space, we're able to draw multiple narratives from a singular kind of image. As a consequence, it gives me great pleasure. One of the latest things that we are working on that launched yesterday is we are guest editing with the Centre of Disruptive Media and the Disruptive Media Learning Lab, a guest edition of the Journal of Media Practice. Now, we've crudely called this the Disruptive Journal. It kind of works in that environment where nobody wants to do something differently. But I think the core of the journal is very much trying to get at what does that mean when we think of performative engagement, when we think of research, when we think of education? How can we explore that in an academic journal beyond the hierarchy of the textual form? I have to bring my children into any talk. You know, they dominate my life. And I think what I'm really trying to say is when we think of learning, it isn't this fixed, this status. But Lily sort of said to me, well, I do it by purpose. So I hope that today, perhaps what you can consider doing is do this thing by purpose. Thank you.